An in-context feature is a feature created on one part of an assembly that uses a different part of the same assembly as a reference. Now this could be almost anything, from a gasket created by offsetting the edges of the housing, like we see here in this assembly, to a flange created by converting the edges of a hole pattern on an adjacent flange. This gasket was created using in-context relations. Say I wanted to make a copy of this entire assembly while keeping the external references intact. What's the best way to do this? When you save the assembly with a new name, you also need to save the part, in this case the gasket, with a new name. In other words, you'll end up with a new gasket file and the old housing file, all contained in the new assembly file. All of the in-context features and relations will also be in the new assembly file. I'll go to the File menu and select Save As. This brings up the Save As dialog box. I'll go ahead and enter the new assembly file name and then click on the References button at the bottom of the dialog box. This brings up the Save As with References dialog box. Locate the in-context gasket in the name column and carefully rename it with a new name. Be sure to include the file extension in the new file name and double-check that the new file name now appears in green text. You may have to click one of the other rows of the listing to see the green text. There are some additional tools for modifying the file names under the More Options button. When you're finished making adjustments, click Save All, and now the new assembly is open with the new parts contained in that assembly. All of the in-context features are also contained in the new assembly. You could also use SOLIDWORKS Explorer to copy and rename the components, and you'll be able to maintain the in-context relationships. To do this, I'll right-click the file I'd like to copy in the File Explorer tree, in this case the assembly, and click Copy. SOLIDWORKS Explorer asks me if I'd like to perform a pack-and-go copy, which will copy the references, update the files where used, and create a zip file, and since this is an in-context assembly, I'll need to use this option. In the Save to Name column, go ahead and change the file name of the assembly and in-context components. Just double-click the old file name, and a Rename Save to Names dialog allows you to easily rename the file. Then, just pick Save, and your renaming is complete. You can then open up the new assembly and verify the new assembly, components, and in-context relationships. You could also use File, Find References to copy the entire assembly with all components to a new location. This way, you have two copies of a fully functional in-context assembly. I'll click the Copy Files button. I'll browse to the location where I'd like the new files to be saved, and then click Save. You could then rename the components in either folder with SOLIDWORKS Explorer if desired.